bhavodaham sanishkriyau. The four divisions of retired life are Vaikhansas, Valakhilyas, Adambaras, and Phenapas. The four divisions of the renounced order of life are Kotichaka, Bhavodas, Hamsa, and Nishkriyas. All these were manifested from Brahma. So Vanaprastha, as you know, is the stage after Grahastha and before Sannyas, where the Grahasthas, they still associate with their wives. But depending on which stage they are, they might leave their house, head for the jungle, or they may build a cottage close to the village and still depend on some kind of sustenance. So the four kind of vanaprasthas are described here. The Vaikhansas are the vanaprasthas that live on wild grains. The Valakhilyas are the ones that will give away accumulated grains on gaining new grains, which means that they do not hoard. Then the Adambaras are the ones that live off what he acquires by walking in the direction he sees on getting up in the morning. This is another way of saying that such a person does not cultivate donors, in the sense that it's not that they will have certain fixed donors and they will always go to them, but whichever direction they happen to see when they get in the morning, they'll walk in that direction. And the Phenapas lives off fruits and grains that have fallen off the ground, which means they live off nature. So these are the four kinds of vanaprasthas based on the different modes of sustenance. And then there are the four kinds of sannyasis: the Kotichaks, the Bhavodas, the Hamsas, and the Nishkriyas. So the Kotichaks, they mainly concentrate on Karmakand and they live in their own cottage. The Bhavodas, they reject karma and they mainly focus on Gyan. The Hamsas are transcendental and they are fixed in knowledge. And the Nishkriyas have already attained realization. So the list is in the order of increasing superiority. And verse 44. Anivikshiki Traivarta Dandanitis Tathevacha Evam Vyathayaschasam Pranavohayasya Daharataha. The science of logical argument, the Vedic goals of life, and also law and order, moral codes, and the celebrated hymns Bhu, Bhuva, and Swaha are all manifested from the mouths of Brahma. And the Pranav Omkar was manifested from his heart. So logic and various kinds of knowledge are coming from the Eastern and the other mouths in succession. And the words Anivikshiki Trai, they refer to the Chaturpurushartha of a Dharma, Artha, Kam, and Moksha. And the Vyartya means the individual worlds, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, and their combination, which is a combination of Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha. These four arose from Brahma's four mouths. Verse 45. Tasyoshne sililum Gayatri cha tvacho vibaha Trishtam mam shalsnuto nashtub Jagate asthanaha prajapatehe. Thereafter, the art of literary expression, Ushnik, was generated from the hairs on the body of the Almighty Prajapati. The principal Vedic hymn Gayatri was generated from the skin, Trishtup from the flesh, Anushtup from the veins, and Jagati from the bones of the Lord of the living entities. So these are the various meters in which the Vedic verses are chanted. Gayatri is one of the most popular, and Anushtup, in which most of the verses in the Bhagavad Gita are there, which is essentially 4 lines of 4 syllables each. And there are others, Tishtup, which are the longer verses. So they are coming from the various body parts of Lord Brahma. Verse 46. Majaya panktirutpana brahati pranato bhavat. The art of writing verse, pankti, became manifested from the bone marrow, and that of brahati, another type of verse, was generated from the life breath of the Lord of the living entities. So these are both the art of writing verses. Pankti has 40 syllables and brahati has 36 syllables. Okay, verse 47. Svarshastasya bhavajjiva swaro deha udarataha ushmanan indranya ahur anthastha balamatmanaha swara sapta viharena bhavanti sma prajapatehe. Brahma's soul was manifested as the touch alphabets, his body as the vowels, his senses as the sibilant alphabets, his strength as the intermediate alphabets, and his sensual activities as the 7 notes of music. So the verse describes the origin of the various kinds of sounds. Prabhupada writes that in Sanskrit, there are 13 vowels and 35 consonants. And the vowels are a, I, u, r, ri, l, a, I, o, au. And the consonants are k, k, g, g, etc. Among the consonants, the first 35 letters are called sparshas. There are also 4 anthasthas. Of the ushmas, there are 3 sas called talvya, murdhanya, and dantya. The musical notes sa, re, ga, ma, dha, ni, all these sound vibrations are originally called Shabd Brahma or spiritual sound. It is said, therefore, that Brahma was created in the Mahakalpa as the incarnation of spiritual sound. So Mahakalpa refers to the Kalpa in which Brahma was born. This will be expanded in the next verse. Verse 48. Shabda Brahmatmanastasya Vyaktya Vyaktatmana Paraha Brahma Vabhati Vitato Nana Shakya Upa Brahmahitaha Upa Brahmhitaha. Brahma is the personal representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the source of transcendental sound and is therefore above the conception of manifested and unmanifested. Brahma is the complete form of the absolute truth and is invested with multifarious energies. So the verse essentially shows that Brahma is extraordinary, and as a manifestation of the Lord, he is invested with tremendous powers. So the verses that have come in the past, they're just giving us a glimpse, but essentially everything that is that is part of the secondary creation is coming from Brahma. And then his body is being glorified as Shabda Brahma. And so in the previous purport, Srila Prabhupada, he talks about Shabd Brahma, that all these sound vibrations were originally called Shabd Brahma or spiritual sound. It is said, therefore, that Brahma was created in the Mahakalpa as the incarnation of spiritual sound. So here it's explained that his body is actually Shabda Brahma. And this is why sometimes it is said that Brahma's body is subtle, it represents intelligence, or it represents knowledge. So this is the understanding, because his body is composed of Vedas. And because in the Vedas, the worshipable object is the Supreme Lord. So that is why it is reasonable to say that the Supreme Lord appears as the worshipable object in the form of Brahma, whose body is the Vedas. So just like we say that the Supreme Lord appears as the worshipable object in the Vedas, and because Brahma's body is the Vedas, we can also say the Supreme Lord appears as the worshipable object in the form of Brahma. And he manifests as Vaikari, which is the external sound, and the Pranav Om. So the Lord is also manifested as Brahma, which is the object of the impersonal Gyan, and then as Bhagwan, the object of pure personal knowledge filled with many Shaktis. So describing this very close association of Brahma with the Lord, Maitreya, as per Vishwanath Chakravarti, is also trying to re-emphasize the point that because Brahma is Shakti in avatar of Krishna, he was not contaminated by the sin of approaching his daughter. Prabhupada in the purport, he says that Brahma is the complete representation of the personality of Godhead. And then the transcendental sound Pranav, which is Om, comes from him. And because of this close association, Prabhupada says that all the demigods like Indra, Chandra, and Varun are also manifested from him. So his transcendental value is not to be minimized, even though he exhibited a tendency to enjoy his own daughter. That is the purpose for the exhibition of there is a purpose for the exhibition of such a tendency by Brahma. And he is not to be condemned like an ordinary living entity. So what is the purpose of the exhibition of such a tendency? That unless one takes complete shelter of the Lord, one will remain fallible. That even one as great as Brahma became enamored. So what hope is there for jivas like us? So the lesson that Prabhupada mentions here is that we should always be very vigilant. And on our own, we will never be able to fight these contaminating consciousness unless we take shelter. Okay, next verse, 49. Tato param upadaya sasargaya manodadehe. Thereafter, Brahma accepted another body in which sex life was not forbidden, and thus he engaged himself in the matter of further creation. So Prabhupada says that in his former body, which was transcendental, affection for sex life was forbidden. And therefore, Brahma had to accept another body to allow himself to be connected with sex. He thus engaged himself in the matter of creation. His former body transformed into fog, as previously described. So Prabhupada explains that because the body was contaminated by that consciousness, he gave up that body. And it became the fog, which is the darkness that covers all the directions. And now he took on another body in which sex life was not forbidden. So there are a couple of ways to understand this. So Prabhupada says that because the former body was transcendental, affection for sex life was forbidden. So it does not mean that he took on a lower body. It's not that he stopped being transcendental or stopped or he changed his position. So one understanding is that from Brahma's body came other bodies in which sex life was not forbidden. So he created the Prajapatis, and the Prajapatis were allowed to engage in pious sexual activity for the purpose of expanding the universe. Vishwanath Chakravarti, he says in this verse, he explains that Brahma accepted another body means that he accepted another body in which the forbidden act of lust was not there. So because his previous body was contaminated by the forbidden act, he gave it up and he accepted another body in which this forbidden act was not there. So the understanding is that it is all of the above. That he gave up his body because it was contaminated. He took on another body which was not contaminated by the forbidden act. And also that through the Prajapatis, he took on a body in which sex life was not forbidden. Verse 50. Rishinam bhuriviryanam api sargam avistratam yatva tadradaye bhuyas chintyama shakaurava. O son of the Kurus, when Brahma saw that in spite of the presence of sages of great potency, there was no sufficient increase in population, he seriously began to consider how the population could be increased. So in 8 verses, from 50 to 57, the appearance of Swayambhuva Manu is described. And this also connects with the statement that was made that Brahma, through his body, he manifested other bodies in which procreation was allowed. So Brahma, he had initially thought that his 10 initial sons, Marichi, etc., would increase the population, but they did not. Now Narad, as we know, he stayed an Aishtik Brahmachari, and there was not a significant increase. So he began to seriously consider what to do now. Verse 51. Aho adbhutame tanme vyapratasya pinetyada nahe edanti prajanunam daivamatra vikatakam. Brahma thought to himself, alas, it is wonderful that in spite of me being scattered all over, there is still insufficient population throughout the universe. There is no other cause for this misfortune but Daivam. Daivam is destiny. So what does it mean when Brahma says that in spite of me being scattered all over? So he's considering those that he has produced to be part of his body. So he had created the first set of descendants, and despite that, the population was insufficient. And the last Deva Matra Vigatakam. So this indicates the exalted thinking of Brahma. That even though, so the verse starts with Aho Alahas, but this should not be considered as a lamentation from Brahma. This is simply, and Prabhupada says, Adbhutam as wonderful. That he's marveling at the hand of destiny, or more so, he's marveling at the fact that things take time. So he's accepting that the Aho is not lamentation, and it glorifies Brahma's position. That because he's accepting that things take time, they happen when they happen, he does not become morose. He does not give up his duty. But as we will see, that he will still continue to deliver on what the responsibility Krishna has given him. Verse 52. Evam yukta kritastasya devam chavekshatas tada kasya rupam ahudveda yat kayam abhichakshate. While he was thus absorbed in contemplation and was observing the supernatural power, two other forms were generated from his body. They are still celebrated as the body of Brahma. So this is the body of Brahma in which sexual intercourse is allowed. So what happens is that so Brahma's name is Ka. One of his name is Ka, and these two personalities, because they are descendants of Brahma, they are referred as Kaya. And Prabhupada says that two bodies came out from the body of Brahma. One had a mustache and the other had swollen breasts. No one can explain the source of the manifestation. And therefore, until today, they are known as Kayam, or the body of Brahma, with no indication of the relationship as a son or daughter. So Srila Prabhupada makes this point just to explain that it's not that Swayambhavu Manu and Shatrupa were brother and sister, and they engaged in sexual congress. The point is made is that that there is no indication of the relationship as the son or daughter. Now, they are just jivas who manifested through the body of Brahma. So that's why they are known as Kayam. Verse 53. Tabhyan rupa vibhagyama mithunam sampadayata. The two newly separated bodies united together in a sexual relationship. So this, of course, does not point to an immediate activity, but it indicates that the potential is there, or it indicates a future activity. Verse 54. Yastu tatra puman sobun manuho swayam bhava swarat striya sicha Sriya Sikshat Rupakhya Maheshya Asya Mahatmanaha. One of them the one who had the male form became known as the Manu named Swayambhuva. And the woman became known as Shatrupa, the queen of the great Manu. So Manu got the name Swayambhuva because Brahma has the name Swayambhuva with a short A after V. And Swayambhuva basically means that one who is born by himself, which means that does not have a parent. Now Brahma was born from Lord Vishnu, but he does not have a mother and a father in a way that we understand. So he is known as Swayambhu, and as the son of Swayambhu, Manu is known as, or at least this Manu is known as Swayambhu, and his wife is Shatrupa. Tada mithun dharmena prajahayedhad bhabuvire. Thereafter, by sex indulgence, they gradually increased generations of population one after another. And Prabhupada mentions that the name Manav comes from Manu, the name man comes from Manu. They are the origin. Verse 56. Sachapi shat rupayam panchapatyanya ajijanat priyavarto utan pado tishrakanyascha bharata akuti devahutischa prashutiriti sattama. O son of Bharat, in due course of time, he, Manu, begot in Shatrupa 5 children, 2 sons, Priyavarta and Utanpad, and 3 daughters, Akuti, Devahuti, and Prasuti. Next verse. Akutin ruchaya prada kardamaya tumadhyama dakshaya prasutincha yattaputin jagat. The father, Manu, handed over his first daughter, Akuti, to the sage Ruchi. The middle daughter, Devahuti, to the sage Kardam. And the youngest, Prashuti, to Daksh. And from them, all the world filled with population. So Prabhupada says that the Bhagavatam is giving us the history of the creation of the population of the universe. We see that Brahma was the original living creature, and then from him Manu came, and then he and his wife had 2 sons and 3 daughters. And from them all the population in the different planets has sprung up until now. And he said that is why Brahma is known as the grandfather, because Manu is the father, and that is why Krishna is known as the great grandfather, which he says is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 11:39 in the prayers by Arjuna. Where Arjuna says that you are the great grandfather. They therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto you. So this concludes the 12th chapter, and this is primarily a discussion on Visarga. So the chapter 12 and chapter 20 of the 3rd canto are almost identical. So in the 20th chapter also we'll see that it will open up by a brief description of the Sarga and then moves on to Visarga. And then it talks about the creation of day and night, the demons and demigods, apsaras and gandharvas, the creation of the great sages, etc. So similar topic, but talks about a slightly different set of details. So let me pause over here and see if we have any discussion or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, like so, like the souls in the body of Mahavishnu, right? So if like I'm just trying to understand, like I mean, so if Brahma would not have created, for example, if it was not, or if his children, um, would not have expanded, um, the like so the souls in the body of Mahavishnu, would they, like I mean, those who are not, those who don't have, those who don't get a body, like do they still, like I mean, um, are like in the body of Mahavishnu, if they don't, if they are not able at the time of creation, if they are not able to get a suitable body based on their karma, then uh, do they remain in Mahavishnu's body?
Don't know the specific answer to that, but the first part of your, I think where you're coming from is that, what if Brahma fails? And I don't believe that happens, because if that happened, then then the whole understanding of the cycle of karma, one gets a body at a certain time according to the desires, all that gets negated. Now, this whole process of experiencing adversities and challenges and overcoming them, they are there to show dependence on the Lord, to show that services are even though empowered by the Lord, require um, lot of effort and lot of consideration. Um, but um, I don't think so. There is a situation where um, there is a universe and there's Brahma, and then he finally gives up and says that this is not working. Let me just hang around the universe by myself and let the jivas hang out in the in Garbhodakshaya Vishnu or Mahavishnu. So the point I'm making is the cycle happens. We know that in certain universes, when there is no qualified Brahma, then Lord Vishnu sometimes takes the role of Lord Brahma. Lord Shiva sometimes takes the role of Brahma. So, so um, that assurances are there that things will happen as planned. Was that your question, Achyuta? Did I get it right?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand like what happens. Like he was like his like Narada, and he didn't he didn't populate before Manu, like his other, they didn't populate the universe. So like the souls that were in Mahavishnu, like did they like, just remain there?
They did. I mean, it's a little mystical that I guess your question is that if the four Kumars had populated, then the souls would have had an opportunity to get a body sooner than later.
Right.
Right. So that part is a little mystical, that everything happens as per one's destiny, and all the activities fall in together, but at the same time everybody's free will is preserved. It's like karma. When we try to decipher karma, then we are getting what we deserve, sometimes by our own agency, but most of the time by the agency of others. So in a way, they are acting out to give us the result of our karma, but their free will is also preserved at the same time. So if somebody gives you something in charity or helps you, then the person is is doing something in response to a pious activity that you did, but the person's own free will is preserved because he also gets the pious results of the activity. If he was simply acting out as an instrument, then that person would not get any pious or impious reactions. So, um, the law of karma is easy to state, but how it works is very difficult. But by some mystical arrangement of Krishna, it does work.
Right. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Uh, we sometimes hear that in Christian philosophy there is a Adam and Eve kind of philosophy. Sometimes I heard that is anywhere either Prabhupada mentioned or disagreed that any correlation between Manu, Swayambhu Manu and Shatarupa, the first man and first woman, like Adam and Eve kind of discussion ever. Prabhupada had any comments on that, Prabhuji?
That is, Swayambhavu Manu is the same as Adam. Honestly speaking, Prabhu, if he had, I'm not aware of it. I can see where you're coming from. I mean, there's some difference also that Eve was born not from the Lord, but Eve was born from Adam. But I think same symbolism. If Prabhupada had any comments on it, I have not come across them, not aware of them.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So we can now proceed to the 13th.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Prabhu.
Sorry, Prabhu. The 4 types of sannyasis that you were saying, Guti Chaka, Bahudak, Paramahamsa, and then Nishkriya, you said, is the same as Parivijakacharya? Because that's the classification Prabhupada usually gives, Parivijakacharya. So Nishkriya is one who performs activity but then without reaction. Is that what it means? Nishkriya means?
Nishkriya is one who is firmly situated in transcendence. So the division of the sannyasis, so there are more than one ways they are divided, and there is more than one criteria by which is used to divide them. I'm not aware of how they correlate with one another. According to some criteria, there are 5 divisions in sannyas. According to some, there are 8 divisions in sannyas. 4 is there quite commonly. Like I said, there are different criteria, and I'm not sure whether the Parivijacharyas are the same as Nishkriyas or the Paramhamsas are the same as the Hamsas over here. Sorry, Prabhu.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to the 13th chapter, which is titled The Appearance of Lord Vara. And the chapter has 50 verses. So it essentially opens up with an inquiry by Vidur, further details about Swayambhavu Manu, and then we see the conversation between Brahma and Manu, where Manu asks Brahma how best he can serve him, and Brahma instructs, which is why I was making the point that in the previous verse it was said that when Manu and Shatrupa appeared, they joined in sexual congress, it was more of indicative, because we see that when Manu was born, there is actually this conversation right away between Brahma in terms of what his duty is, what should he do. He receives instructions from Brahma, and then he realizes that the Earth planet is missing. So then that leads us to the pastime of Vara. And Maitreya, he combines the pastimes of two Varas, Svetavara and Nilvara. We'll discuss more about it. And the chapter concludes with the Falstuti of the benediction that is offered to one who listens to this pastime of the appearance of Lord Varadev. So the chapter also has a lot of similar to what we saw in the previous chapters, information details, especially with respect to Lord Vara, that from his skins appears the Vedic hymns, from the bodily hair, the kushagraj, from the eyes, the clarified butter. So most of the verses do not have purports. I've also compiled them in a table. As far as I know, I've already sent it to Prem Kishore Prabhu. Prabhu, did you receive this table for 313? You did? Okay. So if he has received it, you have also received it. Okay, so we'll continue with the first verse, chapter 13, canto 3. Sri Sukha Uvacha Nishmaya Vachan Vadato Mune Punyatman Nripa Bhuya Paprachakauravyo Vasudeva Kadarataha. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, O king, after hearing all these most virtuous topics from the sage Maitreya, Vidur inquired further on the topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which he adored to hear. So Prabhupada says that the word Adrataha is significant because it indicates that Vidur had a natural inclination for hearing the transcendental message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And because of that, he was never fully satisfied. He wanted to hear more and more. So Adrata also means of Vidur having respect or paying attention. So which means that he who was attentively or respectfully hearing, he who had a natural inclination to hear the topics of the Lord. And Adrata also means that Vidur, who was respected by Maitreya. So in that context, it means that Maitreya said that, let Vidur hear me through these topics. May he become successful by hearing me speak of the sweetness of Krishna. So we see Maitreya explicitly glorifying Vidur several times. And here the word Adrata also could indicate that, describing Vidur who was respected by Maitreya, or describing Vidur who was having respect for Maitreya or what Maitreya was speaking, or describing Vidur who had a lot of attraction and relish for hearing the Krishna Katha. verse 2. Vidurvacha Savai Swambhuvaha Samara Priya Putra Swayambhuvaha Pratilabhya Priyan Patnin Kinchakra Tato Mune. Vidur said, "O great sage, what did Swayambhavu, the dear son of Brahma, do after obtaining his very loving wife?" So in the verse we see that Vidur is also describing the uh, uh, the description of the name. So he calls Brahma Swayambhuva with a short a, and he calls Manu as Swayambhuva. Next verse. Charitam tasya rajrishe adi rajasya sattama bruhi me shradodhanaya vishvaksena shraya hayasau. O best of the virtuous, the original king of kings, Manu, was a great devotee of the personality of Godhead Hari, and thus it is worth hearing of his sublime character and activities. Please describe them. I am very eager to hear. And Prabhupada mentions that the Bhagavatam is not only a glorification of Krishna, but also about his pure devotees. And the statement by Vidur is testimony to the fact that he has been described as Adrasham, one who is interested in Krishna Katha, and here he is expressing interest in hearing about Manu, because there is no difference between the Supreme Lord and his devotees, which means that there is no difference in hearing the pastimes of the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Both of them are equally potent in helping one develop bhakti. And we personally see that also many times, that we may enjoy Krishna Katha, but if we hear Prabhupada Katha, that also inspires us. So listening to the memories of Prabhupada, or reading Leela Amrita, or books written by his disciples, they all are equally potent in developing bhakti, because of this absolute nature, that you cannot discuss the pastimes of a devotee without discussing Krishna, because that's what the devotees are all about. But they are sweeter because you can relate to them. So I'm reading the biography of Yamuna Mataji, and then we see that at least it inspires me how her mood of exclusive devotion to Srila Prabhupada. So her biography is partly autobiography, but she wasn't able to complete it. So it's kind of like a merge. Bit of it is biography, bit of it is autobiography. But the mood is very strong of her desire to continuously serve Prabhupada, and it's very inspiring. Verse 13.4. Shrutasya pumsha suchira shramasya nanvagyas shurubiridi tvartha tattad gunano shravanam mukunda padaravindan hridaye suyesham. People who hear from a spiritual master with great labor and for a long time must hear from the mouth of pure devotees persons who hear from a spiritual master with great labor and for a long time must hear from the mouths of pure devotees about the character and activities of pure devotees. Pure devotees always think within their hearts of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, who awards his devotees liberation. So the point made by Vidur in this is that that the knowledge that is possessed by a learned person, it is useless unless it includes hearing about the Lord and his devotees. So the artha, the goal of the person engaged in studying the scriptures from the mouth of the Guru, Shrutasya, and if he's engaged in a long time, says Suchira Shramasya, is praised by the great devotees for this reason, that when they study the scriptures from the mouth of the Guru, then they also study the pastimes of the Lord and his devotees. And the goal is the hearing and the chanting about the qualities of the person who have Krishna's lotus feet in his heart. The Prabhupada says that such pure devotees of the Lord are glorious. As the Lord, they are in fact recommended by the Lord as more worshipable than he himself. This is one of the verses Prabhupada would quote, that one who worships me should not be considered as my devotee, but one who worships my devotee should be considered as my devotee. And Prabhupada continues to say that more so when it is explained by other devotees. So the pastimes of the devotees of the Lord presented by other devotees of the Lord, the nectar becomes increasingly concentrated. So Krishna is concentrated nectar, but it becomes even more concentrated in the hearts of the devotees. And it is even more concentrated when other devotees describe the pastimes or the katha of these devotees. Okay, verse 5. Shri Sukha Vacha Iti Bruvana Vidurum Vinitam Sahasa Shrishna Charano Padanam Praharastaroma Bhagavad Kathayam Praniyamano Muniyabhyachasta. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna was pleased to place his lotus feet on the lap of Vidur because Vidur was very meek and gentle. The sage Maitreya was very pleased with Vidur's word, and being influenced by his spirit, he attempted to speak. The Prabhupada says that the word Sahasra Shishna is very significant because he says that one who has diverse energies and activities and a wonderful brain is known as Sahasra Shishna, and it can only be applied to Krishna and no one else. And Maitreya is happy that Vidur is asking him this question because Vidur himself has received the mercy of the Lord. That when Krishna would visit Hastinapur, then he would visit Vidur's house. And he had a very intimate relationship with him. And there is, of course, the famous pastime when Krishna went as the messenger. And Duryodhan, he wanted to kind of bribe Krishna. So he had very, very opulent arrangement made for Krishna's stay. and Krishna declined. And he instead went to the house of Vidur, who wasn't expecting Krishna. But Vidur and his wife were so happy that they welcomed him. And they were peeling bananas and giving Krishna the skin of the banana and throwing the bananas away. And Krishna was eating the skin of the bananas. So they had a very, very close relationship. Maitreya was aware of it. And it is says that abhyachasta, that he was trying to speak, which Prabhupada indicates that because of being overwhelmed by this emotion, that he was prahasta Roma, that his hairs were standing in ecstasy, because he is being questioned by a devotee about a devotee to talk about Krishna Katha. So it's the best of the best. So he became overwhelmed, praniyamana, and abhyachasta attempted to speak, but Sutta says Muni. So he's a sage, so he will speak, just so that somebody may not get concerned that he does not speak. So Muni is one who is able to control the mind, and he's able to control the mind in the service of the Lord. So he will answer the questions of Vidur, as we'll see. Verse 6. Maitrivacha yada svabharyaya shraddham jata swayam bhuvo manuhu pragyali pranataschetam vedagarbham abhasata. The sage Maitreya said to Vidur, after his appearance, Manu, the father of mankind, along with his wife, thus addressed the reservoir of Vedic wisdom, Brahma, with obeisances and folded hands. Next verse. Tvameka sarvabhutanam janmakrat vritida pita tatapi na prajanam te shushurusha kena va bhave. You are the father of all living entities and the source of their subsistence, because they're all born of you. Please order us how we may be able to render service unto you. The Prabhupada really likes this mood. You've seen the purport. Prabhupada says that that's how a son should be. That the son should, when the son is grown up, the son should ask the father that how can I serve you? And this has been happening since the beginning of creation. So the father's duty is to make sure that the son gets a proper upbringing, proper education, proper samskars. And how does the son reciprocate? By rendering service according to the desires of the father. And this, of course, is also applicable to the relationship between a spiritual master and the disciple, because they are like father and son. The relationship is spiritual. Verse 8. Tadvide namastubhyam karma savidyatma saktishu yat kritve hayasho vishva amurta cha bhaved gatihi. O worshipable one, please give us your direction for the execution of duty within our working capacity, so that we can follow it for fame in this life and progress in the next. So Prabhupada writes that that Brahma, he received his knowledge from Krishna. And then anyone who is discharging the duties in the disciplic succession from Brahma is sure to gain fame in this life and salvation in the next. And then Prabhupada goes ahead and in the purport he writes the disciplic succession all the way from Brahma to himself. Brahma, Narad, Vyas, Madhav Muni, and then he ends with A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So the point is, he says is that the line of disciplic succession from Brahma is spiritual, whereas the genealogical succession from Manu is material. But both are progressive march towards the same goal of Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada emphasizes on both. That Manu is asking for instructions from his father because there's a genealogical relationship, and the sampradaya is more so based on initiation. And of course, he writes specifically about the Gaudiya Madhav Sampradaya. Verse 9. Brahmovacha Pritastubhyam aham tata Svasti stadvan Pritishvara Yan nirvaya liken hrida Sadhi metyatmana pramitam. Lord Brahma said, "My dear son, O Lord of the world, I am very pleased with you, and I desire all blessings from you and your wife. All blessings for you and your wife. You have without reservation surrendered yourself unto me with your heart for my instructions." So Manu, in the previous verse, he had said that give instructions to me. So he did not mention the subject, as in saying that you give instructions to me. So Brahma is pleased that Manu has surrendered his ego and possessiveness to him. Manu has accepted Brahma as the source of his instructions. So Srila Prabhupada says that the father and son relationship as exhibited here in the dealings of Brahma and Manu is excellent. Both the father and son are well qualified, and their example should be followed by all humankind. Manu, the son, unreservedly asked the father Brahma to instruct him. And the father, who was full of Vedic wisdom, was very glad to instruct. The example of the father of the mankind may be rigidly followed by mankind. And this will advance the cause of the relationship of fathers and sons. So we see Prabhupada preaching over here that if there is a qualified father and a qualified son, then the submission should be complete, and that will result in advancement. Verse 10. So we'll do maybe 2 more verses, and we can stop for any discussion. Etavatya majairvira Karyahaya pachitir gurau Shaktya apramatir grihita Sadran gattamatsaraha. O hero, your example is quite befitting a son in relationship with his father. This sort of adoration for the superior is required. One who is beyond the limit of envy and who is sane accepts the order of his father with great delight and executes it to his full capacity. So Brahma is happy now because he has had a little bit of mixed experience with his sons. So first the four Kumars came, and then Brahma said, do something, and they said no. And then he created 10 sons, and then he asked Narad. Then Narad was like, he went on his own program. And then the Rudras came, and they did part of what Brahma asked, and they went on their own program. They started devouring everybody. So now he's happy that there is Swayambhavu Manu who has come, and he's completely focused on executing the desires of Brahma. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport says that, of course, one should understand that, and this point was made earlier on, that the refusal of the four Kumars, while it upset Brahma, but it should not be taken as irreligious. And this he explained earlier also, because it was for a higher purpose, because it was for the sake of making advancement in one's own spiritual life. Okay, we'll do a couple of more verses and stop. Verse 11. Satvam ashyam aptyani sadrashanya atmano gunaha utpadya shashdharmena ganyagya purusham yaja. Since you are my very obedient son, I ask you to beget children qualified like yourself in the womb of your wife. Rule the world in pursuance of the principles of devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus worship the Lord by performance of yajna. So Brahma is essentially giving Manu the principles of Varnashram Dharma. So in the Vishnu Puran, it is said that that one worships the Supreme Lord Vishnu by the proper discharge of the principles of the Varna and the Ashram. There is no alternative to pacifying the Lord by execution of the principles of the Varnashram Dharma. And Prabhupada says that the Varnashram Dharma is the systematic institution for advancing and worship of Vishnu. But then he gives the example of the Chaturkumar, that there is also the elevator approach, wherein one takes to the path of bhakti and worships the Lord directly, provided they have the requisite purification. Okay, next verse. Param shushurnam mayam syad prajarakshaya nripa bhagwan ste prajabartur rishikesho antushanti rishikesho anutushyati. O king, if you can give proper protection to the living beings in the material world, that will be the best service for me. When the Supreme Lord sees you to be a good protector of the conditioned souls, certainly the master of the senses will also be very pleased with you. So Brahma is careful over here to also impress on Swayambhavu Manu that the service that he is rendering is ultimately to Krishna. So he's congratulating Manu that he desires to serve his father by following the instructions, and it is a glorious trait, and he's giving him instructions now of what to do. But then at the same time, he's also establishing the link with the personality of Godhead. So he says, Rishikeshaha anutushyanti. So tushyanti means satisfaction. Rishikesha is Krishna, and anu means following. That do following what the satisfaction of the Lord is. So the word anu is important because following is important. So Manu is tushyanti for Brahma. Brahma is tushyanti for the personality of God. So there is anutushyanti. And that's what our process is also. That we serve the Lord by serving the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. So where there is tushyanti over there, then the anutushyanti also manifests. And Prabhupada says that the law book of the entire human society is the Manu Samhita, which directs all activities to the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So Prabhupada says, how does Manu actually implement this? That he gives very detailed, Manu Samhita, very, very detailed instructions. Essentially, it's mostly Varnashram, but very, very detailed instructions about how to perform the various duties to serve the personality of Godhead. And in the end, Prabhupada says that by training the citizens in the devotional service of the Lord, the head of a state can be free in his responsibility. Otherwise, he will fail in the onerous duty entrusted to him and thus be punishable by the supreme authority. There is no alternative in the discharge of administrative duty. So this is a point that Prabhupada, he speaks very strongly about, that the kings, unless they follow the Vedic code of religion, which is anutushyanti, will lead their citizens astray and will be responsible for all the sinful reaction that is accruing. So that is why I say there is no alternative. One has to follow in the path of Lord Manu by understanding the Manu Samhita and executing the responsibilities of an administrative head according to the rule book. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and see if there's any comments.
Hare Krishna, just one comment. Satsarup Das Goswami, he wrote a lot about Prabhupada. I think you remember, I think we went there, in Gitanagari, where his cottage was, where he was doing all his writing. And it's really impressive the work that he did single-handedly. And he wrote so much about Prabhupada. And then I was always amazed, like, who told him, like, right from the beginning, he started to take note and then write about Srila Prabhupada. If it was not for him, today we won't have all these literature, the poster of Srila Prabhupada in ISKCON, starting ISKCON and all that. It's really amazing.
It is, and I think some of the, maybe all the disciples, they have this intuition of their service. So right from the beginning, they're preparing for it.
As if he was brought in just for that. It looked like.
Almost looks like, you're right. You're right. It does look mystical.
Yeah. Then another question, Prabhu, Manu Samhita. Do we still have the book physically, or?
As far as I know, we do have the Manu Samhita. I don't know how much of it is preserved or whatever, but I believe we do have Manu Samhita. I saw so obviously nobody in the ISKCON or the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya has like translated it or paid much attention to it. But I did see in Vrindavan, I did see a translation of Manu Samhita. I'm not sure who did it, but there was a book that was stuck, Manu Samhita with the translation. So we seem to have something, but I don't know whether it is fully bona fide or it covers the entire Manu Samhita. That I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you don't have any further questions, we can stop a little early. We'll continue from the 13th verse on Wednesday. Vanchakalpatarubhayaschet kripa sindhu vyevachah patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Sai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.